Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Our mission, as always, is to take that whole stack of sources you shared with us and really pull out the most important structural movements
Yeah.
to give you a clearer, faster picture of the world. Okay, so let's try to unpack this. If we had to find the simplest way to summarize yesterday's world, what was the defining movement? What was the main vector?
Well, if you boil it all down, the single most powerful force we mapped was a direct conflict. It was physical constraint versus digital acceleration.
Okay, explain that.
Think of it this way. The digital world, especially this huge demand for AI, is moving at an exponential pace. I mean, it is just flooring the gas pedal.
Right.
But the moment that digital capital tries to become real, it hits these slow, messy, physical systems, energy, water, supply lines, and it just slams into a brick wall. And the world is reacting very, very unevenly to that pressure.
I really like that framing. We're mapping the friction between virtual speed and real-world inertia. And that point of friction, that's exactly where our three deep dives for today are focused.
It is.
So our first one deals directly with how quickly a single political decision can just shock a multi-trillion-dollar market.
Exactly. Our first structural movement is all about geopolitical flexibility and a global oil supply.
The big headline here, for anyone who follows energy, was the immediate drop in the price of crude oil. It happened right after the U.S. administration signaled it might accept supply from Venezuela.
Yeah.
So why is this happening now? Why did the market react so violently?
This is a perfect case study in how these institutional levers actually work. It sits right at the intersection of energy markets, finance, and really critically, the political tool of sanctions.
The tool the U.S. has been using for years to control where Venezuelan oil can go.
Precisely. The U.S. has used sanctions to build a kind of wall to dictate where that crude can and can't go. But right now, you have global market needs and, broader strategic games being played that are really testing the stability of that entire framework.
So if the whole point of the sanctions is to limit supply, then just a hint of flexibility means.
It means supply could go up and potentially by a lot. The trigger yesterday was an indication from the U.S. president that Venezuela might send a really substantial amount of crude oil over to the U.S. market.
And we're cutting a serious volume here.
A very serious volume, in the range of 30 to 50 million barrels. Now, this isn't oil in a pipeline yet, but the mere potential for that volume increase just immediately rippled through the trading floors.
It's just fascinating how fast that happens. The price of both WTI and Brent crude dropped almost instantly. It really shows you how much of this is driven by expectation, isn't it?
Absolutely. The financial operating system reflects policy in real time. And there's a second-order effect here, too.
Because
A lot of Venezuelan cargo right now is headed to places like China. So if the U.S. opens the door, it means that crude could be redirected. You're changing the market balance on multiple continents at once.
this sounds like a strong short-term win for consumers. It impacts fuel and logistics costs. But if the U.S. does accept this oil, doesn't that sort of undermine the credibility of their own sanctions regime long-term?
That is the core tension the sources point to. It has a strong real-life impact on costs, for sure, though it will vary by region. But the deeper meaning here is that it shows how swiftly a diplomatic licensing decision, a political choice, can just override traditional supply and demand.
The diplomatic lever is more powerful than the market lever in this case.
It's one of the most powerful, yeah. It's capable of moving hundreds of millions of dollars in a minute.
Okay, that really highlights the speed of institutional action. Now let's pivot from oil, which is a fast-moving political issue, to AI, where the constraint is much more physical, much slower.
Right.
Our second deep dive shows exactly where that digital acceleration is hitting the physical brick wall you mentioned, and that's in South Korea.
This is a huge structural movement. It's really defining the future of AI supply chains. The core insight is the physical dependence of AI manufacturing, and it's all focused on South Korea's Yongin megacluster plan.
And this plan is moving forward aggressively.
Very aggressively. It's securing massive national-level investment for advanced semiconductor manufacturing.
And the driver here is just this explosive global demand for AI infrastructure, right? Specifically things like HBM high bandwidth memory and the advanced logic chips that you need to run these new AI models.
Exactly. That demand is so exponential, it's forcing governments to stop relying on, a dispersed global supply chain and instead create these highly concentrated, nationally backed production hubs. If you want to feed the AI boom, you have to build an immense, stable manufacturing base.
And the scale of this Yongin cluster is just It's staggering. When you look at the investment numbers that came out yesterday, it feels less like a business investment and more like a national project.
That's a great way to put it. The Korean Industry Ministry is pouring support into this. The pledges are just colossal. Samsung is reportedly in for 360 trillion won, SK Hynix for 600 trillion won.
Which in US dollars is?
It's hundreds of billions of dollars, all dedicated to this one small area. This isn't just a new factory. They're building one of the largest chip clusters in the world.
So this represents the physical fixing of that next-gen AI supply capacity.
It does. It gives South Korea's capacity a high global weight and real midterm significance. This cluster is going to dictate the flow and price of advanced chips for years. But, and here's the problem, here's where that constraint versus acceleration theme comes roaring back.
The slow layer hitting the fast layer.
Exactly. The sources highlight this critical physical constraint that could turn this entire triumph into a major vulnerability.
What's the bottleneck?
Water and power and gas. We call it WSF, water, services, and fuel, the basic inputs. A cluster of this scale requires a monumental amount of industrial water for cooling, and that need for WSF makes the entire project highly vulnerable to regional infrastructure capacity.
So you have billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of AI capital, but it's all completely dependent on a decades-old city planning problem. How do you get enough water to one specific place?
That's it in a nutshell. The local pipes, the water treatment plants, the power grid, that becomes the bottleneck. It doesn't matter how much money AI throws at it, you still need the slow, physical world of permits and pipes to catch up.
A truly high-stakes dependency. Okay, let's move to our third deep topic. This one highlights friction, not in resources, but in geopolitical stability. It's about internal conflict threatening key global logistics routes.
This takes us to Yemen, and it focuses on a fissure that is totally separate from the conflict with the Houthis that most people know about. We're looking at internal divisions that are surfacing within the broader regional alliance.
So these are cracks appearing between groups that are technically on the same side.
Correct. We're seeing what you could call non-coherence within the anti-Houthi coalition. Even groups that are nominally aligned, like forces backed by Saudi Arabia versus those backed by the UAE, they have completely competing goals for who governs and who controls strategic assets.
And what happened on the ground yesterday that brought this friction out into the open?
Reports indicated that the Saudi-backed internationally recognized government forces recaptured territory in the east, specifically the port city of Mukalla. The problem is that advance put them in direct physical conflict with the UAE-supported Southern Transitional Council, the STC, which sees itself as the legitimate local power.
So this is not just a political disagreement. This is a fight for physical control of assets, ports, airports, oil fields.
Exactly. The levers of power and commerce. And because the conflict is centered on these critical infrastructure points, the meaning goes way beyond local politics. This conflict has high global weight.
Because it further destabilizes the entire Red Sea and Gulf of Aden logistics corridor.
Yes, that corridor is essential. It links Asia and Europe. And increased instability there translates immediately into logistical delays and, more importantly, much higher insurance premiums for shipping.
And a lot of those high-tech components we were just talking about, semiconductors, battery materials, they all have to pass through there, don't they?
They do. So a seemingly minor localized disagreement in Yemen can immediately mean higher costs and slower movement for high-tech components around the world. That's how tightly connected the global system is.
That's a perfect definition of a structural tremor. Okay, we've covered the three deep movements. Now let's quickly map some of the other tension points across the globe in our many light topics.
Let's start with a quiet but really significant supply chain reconfiguration happening in Southeast Asia.
This is Vietnam's semiconductor shift. What's the change there?
Vietnam is moving up the value chain. It's not just basic assembly anymore, the old China plus one idea. Now it's focusing on advanced packaging or ATP and even getting into chip design, and it's backed by heavy investment in education.
The implication being that they're trying to build a whole new parallel capability.
Exactly. A new pathway that bypasses some of the existing geopolitical choke points. It changes the long-term topography of the semiconductor supply chain.
Interesting. Okay, next up, that constraint versus acceleration theme is back again, this time in West Africa.
This is a city-driven shift. We're seeing cities like Dakar in Senegal with very serious active plans for data center construction.
And data centers are the physical footprint of AI capital. What's the local impact?
It's profound. It's transforming these cities because the demand for cloud and AI services is creating the financial incentive to finally reinforce the local power grid. Cities are starting to redefine themselves as computation hubs.
But I'm guessing the same risk we saw in Korea cooling water is just as high, if not higher, here.
Oh, absolutely. Water and reliable power are the key constraints in every single one of these emerging hubs.
Okay, moving over to the Middle East, we have the ongoing story of Abu Dhabi's AI campus.
That's right. The plans continue for a massive 5 gigawatt class AI campus there. And what it emphasizes is the strategic concentration of two critical resources in one spot.
Electrical power and computing capital.
Yes, concentrated together. It signals this continued push for global AI dominance that is really going to pressure international export controls and regulations.
And finally, let's check in on Taiwan. We're looking at calcium's packaging focus.
Right. New investments are solidifying Kaohsiung as a major cluster for advanced packaging, including things like CoWoS, that's chip on wafer on substrate.
And why does that specific technology matter so much?
It matters because that process, what's called advanced back-end manufacturing, is the crucial, very narrow choke point for all high-end chips. You can design the best AI chip in the world, but if you can't package it with these techniques, it's useless. This just reinforces Taiwan's central role.
We've covered a lot of ground. Geopolitical shocks, huge physical construction, logistical friction. Bringing this all together, what's the overall picture that emerges? What's the headline for the state of the world?
The fundamental picture shows a huge structural shift. Computation, so AI and data centers and electrical power are rapidly becoming the top-level constraint variables in everything. In geopolitics, in diplomacy, in city planning.
So they're now as important as traditional resources like oil or metals were.
As powerful, if not more so. The entire global system is now restructuring itself around who can access and control compute and power.
Which puts an enormous amount of stress on the physical world, which, as we've said, moves so much slower. So here's where it gets really interesting for me. Looking forward, what should listeners be paying attention to next? Where is all this tension going to build up?
For the next 1 to 2 years, the tension is all going to accumulate in the slow infrastructure layers. That speed mismatch we keep talking about, the fire hose of AI capital versus the slow trickle of physical infrastructure rollout, it's just not sustainable.
We're talking about power grids, local permitting.
Exactly. The power transmission grid, local zoning boards, permitting processes, and, again, access to cooling water.
So the friction isn't some abstract idea. You can actually measure it in the lag time. The time it takes a city council to approve a new water line is now a global economic issue.
And that lag is going to cause a very sudden, very sharp divergence between cities. The ones that can meet these demands, that can permit and build and deliver water and power fast enough, they become the winner cities. They'll attract all the digital capital.
And the ones that can't.
They become the loser cities in this new competition. We're literally watching city-level capacity determine global economic futures.
That's a powerful way to watch the news unfold. So instead of looking at where the money is being pledged, we should be looking at where the infrastructure is stalled.
That's the provocative thought for today. Don't just look at where the AI capital is flowing. Look at where the water and electricity permits are stuck in committee. That lag, that friction point, is where the next major structural movement is going to begin.
That is the deep dive for the day. Thank you for joining us.